Now here on ITV1 and recorded last Thursday, Rageh Omaar presents reports from around the world in On Assignment.
Tonight, On Assignment, after the shocking death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, James Mates travels to Lithuania to ask what Navalny's legacy might be and to speak with Russians who have been forced to flee their country.
If you stand out against the system, it will simply squash you like an insect.
Antoine Allen visits Mayotte in the Indian Ocean, one of France's 5 overseas departments and an outpost of the EU facing a small boat's immigration crisis of its own.
How many of you came here by boat? Hands up.
And Harry Horton joins the inaugural voyage of a new Brussels to Prague sleeper train and asks whether the return of these continental sleepers can compete with the budget airlines for a generation of eco-conscious tourists and business travellers.
That's partly the romance of it, and we want to come down this way, and it's an environmentally friendly way of travelling. It's easy to take a dog.
Good evening and welcome to On Assignment. The death of jailed Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny in a remote Arctic prison has left the fight against Putin's authoritarian regime in crisis. The crackdown on Navalny supporters within Russia has been brutal, and those who dare speak out against the regime risk long and uncertain prison sentences. Most opposition activists have fled abroad, and living in exile, they must now keep the fight for Russian democracy alive without Navalny as their figurehead. James Mates travelled to Lithuania, where many have sought sanctuary, and from where they broadcast to the world their continued hope for a free Russia.
For 3 decades, Lithuania has been free from the rule of Moscow, a vibrant, peaceful democracy, now a home to thousands of exiles. There is no free expression in the Russia they left behind. But that doesn't mean Russians never hear the voice of freedom.
Вы говорите, что Путину сложнее и сложнее удерживать ситуацию под контролем, что его рейтинги.
Пострадавшим сочувствия и максимальной поддержки, потому что, конечно, такого просто быть не должно.
From front rooms or makeshift TV studios, Russian exiles here in Lithuania broadcast the news that Putin has forbidden through social media, most of all on YouTube.
Всем привет.
Every 2 weeks, Mika Golubovsky updates confirmed Russian casualty figures from Ukraine.
Добавились примерно 1200 человек.
Basic information, but politically explosive to Putin.
I think it's pretty important, and it's pretty important for Russians to know what the terrible toll this war is, both for Russia and Ukraine.
And is that information getting through?
Yes, thanks to YouTube.
Ну вот смотри, вот одна из тоже таких.
Vladimir Milov was a close ally of Alexei Navalny, forced to flee his homeland soon after his friend was arrested for the final time.
Привет, друзья, это Milov.
From Lithuania, he continues Navalny's work, broadcasting back home on YouTube, a channel that had 5 million unique viewers last year. I meet him outside the Russian embassy in Vilnius, where the men from Moscow must pass every day a memorial to Navalny.
So this one here, just tell me what this one says.
Not a death, but a murder.
There are many outside Russia who despair of Russia ever becoming a functioning, recognizable democracy. Are they wrong?
Yes, they're wrong. If you stand out against the system, it will simply squash you like an insect. That is the issue, right? But if you scratch that surface deep inside, Russians aspire for freedom and normalcy pretty much as everybody else. So we have significant audience, as a matter of fact, much bigger than the Western radio stations had during the Cold War era. BBC, Voice of America, and so on. We have much bigger outreach in Russia now, so while being in exile, we still maintain significant connection, and the 21st century information age allows that.
You may wonder why a regime as authoritarian as Putin's doesn't simply block Russians from watching these opposition videos. But the reality is that YouTube is a huge source of regular entertainment for ordinary Russians. Comedy shows, children's programs. More than 1 in 3 Russians watch YouTube every single day, 2 in 3 at least once a month. So for Putin to stop Russians seeing it would be hugely unpopular.
There was a time when Pussy Riot, a collective of musicians and dissidents, could stage a protest in Moscow's main cathedral, get arrested, serve some time, and then protest again. For band member Lucia Stein, fighting Putin is now far too dangerous. She fled house arrest 2 years ago, cutting her ankle strap and in the disguise of a delivery rider, getting out of the country. Political activist Violetta Grudina took a very different route, running Navalny's office in the far northern city of Murmansk, slipping out of the country soon after her friend and inspiration disappeared into Putin's prison system.
I don't live there yet.
We brought them together in exile in Vilnius.
My decision was to do what I can do from outside.
In her absence, Lucia has been sentenced to 6 years in a Russian jail.
It's hard to live in scare for your whole life, so you just prefer to not think about it.
Do you still believe Russia can be a recognizably democratic country?
I'm not sure that the democracy for Russia is possible in the current borders, because we have occupied territories and we have different regions, different nations.
You envisage a smaller but democratic Russia in the future?
Yeah, smaller but democratic Russia.
Is that your view as well?
Нет. Я не согласна с мнением, что Россия развалится после войны. Это невозможно.
And it quickly became clear how, even among friends and allies, there are very different views of Russia's future.
Вопрос в чем? Какой я вижу Россию после того, как закончится война? Ну, это, скорее всего, будет федеративная республика с своими обособленными регионами, децентрализованными. Вообще, на самом деле, ни хера не поняла вопрос. Как оккупированная территория связана с демократической Россией?
Нет, это я про оккупированные сказала. Ну, что я типа не вижу демократию в нынешних границах.
Ну, мое мнение по поводу оккупированных территорий о том, что их нужно вернуть.
Living in the freedom and comfort of a Lithuania where the spring is in full bloom, it is easy to dream of bringing democracy to compatriots still trapped in Putin's long Russian winter. But back in the 1920s, white Russian exiles in Paris spent years plotting and planning the downfall of the Bolshevik regime. We know that came to nothing. Is there any reason to think the current opposition movement will be any different? The answer, according to Navalny's former chief of staff, Leonid Volkov, is simple. They are very different regimes. Volkov knows all he wishes to know about Putinism, even in the apparent safety of exile, attacked just last month with a hammer and pepper spray, his hand broken, his family terrified.
I don't think it was an attempt to kill me. It looked like the very last warning, like, we know where you live, you should feel insecure.
You clearly put yourself at very considerable personal risk in order to continue the fight against Putin and Putinism. You must therefore believe that there is a purpose to this, that there's an end to this, that you can win this battle.
Yeah, of course we can. I mean, I don't see any evidence or proof that Putin is immortal. He isn't. He will make his mistakes or he will die, whatever comes first. Putinism is an extremely personalistic dictatorship. he doesn't have a successor, and that's not a bug, that's a feature. Because they are all fighting against each other, they need Putin as a supreme arbiter for their conflicts. But if you take Putin out of this equation, this is just a chaos. And this chaos, whenever it happens, will provide us with, well, at least a huge window of opportunities to become part of this competition and to lead the country towards a democratic transition. So,
is there any chance of that happening?
Yeah, the chance is 100%.
With Alexei Navalny alive, the opposition had a leader, a figurehead, a credible alternative to Putinism. Without him, they have been weakened, without question, though perhaps only temporarily. Navalny believed you could not aspire to lead Russia from exile abroad, which is why he went back. The lesson of his fate is that under Putin, your first job is to stay alive. You must make your pitch to the Russian people from abroad. Which means Lithuania will continue to host Russia's exiled democrats for some time yet. They will need money, unity, determination, but perhaps most of all, they will need patience.
James Mates in Lithuania. We contacted the Russian government for a response, but they didn't get back to us. Next, Mayotte is a small archipelago in the Indian Ocean and one of France's 5 overseas departments. Technically, it's as French as Marseille or Montpellier, but nestled between Mozambique and Madagascar, it's also one of the EU's farthest flung borders. But this quiet French outpost has become a major draw for migrants, both from nearby Comoros Islands and more recently from mainland Africa. The island's small boats crisis has generated international headlines and a controversial change to France's constitution, causing political waves on the mainland. Antoine Allen travelled to Mayotte to find out more.
The islands of Mayotte in the Indian Ocean are closer to Africa than mainland Europe, yet constitutionally it's a part of France. Its unusual status in the region has made it a draw for illegal immigrants, with thousands arriving every year on small boats. Despite being on this tropical paradise, I'm technically still in the EU. Mayotte's decision to remain a French colony has divided it from its neighbours. But the question is, how can it secure its future when it has its own small boats crisis? Mayotte is one of the poorest regions in the EU, yet even with a spike in crime and rolling water shortages, the island's population has ballooned, from less than 100,000 in 1991 to more than 300,000 today. The majority of children born in hospital here are born to migrant mothers.
Dans mon enfance, c'était ici où je vivais, donc là je suis revenue.
When not embarking on the treacherous journey through the forests, Safina Soulas passionately protested for the French government to end illegal immigration.
Bon, je vais quand même soif. T'es sûr que là le 4x4 il est
This is such a hard journey. Why do you have to do it?
If I don't come here, migrants will take my lands. Donc toute cette zone-là était occupée par des clandestins. J'ai planté plusieurs centaines d'arbres d'ylang-ylang et il ne reste plus que 2. Ils ont tout arraché. Donc il ne reste que 2 parce que...
Ylang-ylang is a fragrant flower. Its oil is used in high-end cosmetics. Safina's family has grown it for generations.
Et puis ici à Mayotte, c'est vraiment ce qui symbolise l'île au parfum de Mayotte.
Every damaged plant is lost income. And Safina blames migrants for the theft of her crops and the destruction to her home.
Moi, je ne suis pas protégée. N'importe quoi peut m'arriver. Voilà, je défends mon territoire, je défends mon île, je défends...
What do the Mahorans like you think of the migrants?
Je suis désolée de le dire, mais là, aujourd'hui, on est arrivé à un seuil où on ne peut plus accueillir quelqu'un, on ne peut plus accueillir des migrants. Parce que Mayotte, elle est petite et c'est plus tenable, c'est plus possible. Donc ça devient explosif. Si ce rythme-là continue, Mayotte va sombrer dans la guerre civile.
Like Safina, many here blame the migrants for the crime wave. But Mayotte police told me it's local young people as well as immigrants that are responsible. In response to this growing crisis, the Macron government in Paris have announced a change to the constitution, repealing the so-called birthright rule, meaning that children born here in Mayotte will only get French citizenship if both of their parents are themselves French citizens. It's a controversial change meant to stop the boats. And it's boats like these that the smugglers use to ferry people across the Mozambique Channel. It's a perilous journey, and many have died attempting it. I spoke to a man from the neighbouring Comoros Islands, who at just 5 years old travelled illegally by boat to be reunited with parents already in Mayotte.
Je ne savais rien. On m'a mis juste dans un bateau, allez.
Despite becoming a legal citizen, he was keen to protect his identity.
Alors c'est difficile. Tout à l'heure, la mer était agitée. Il y en a qui risquent de perdre la vie, mais il y en a qui prennent le sacrifice de le faire. Les Comores, c'est pas facile, mais il y en a qui prennent les risques quand même de venir à Mayotte pour une meilleure vie.
Mayotte's GDP is 5 times higher than the Comoros Islands, and for immigrants is a beacon of opportunity.
Daniel, what is this?
Ça, c'est le giroflier.
Daniel Marshal Henry is a member of an influential political party. He fears Mayotte's national and political identity will be replaced by foreigners. He supports the birthright rule change.
There's a lot of desperate people that come here seeking a better life. Why will the change in the birthright rule stop the small boats?
Si aujourd'hui nous enlevons le droit du sol, c'est d'abord montrer que nous avons dépassé les limites de la tolérance et on ne veut plus de l'immigration qui entraîne de l'insécurité sur le territoire, fait qu'en 20 ans, Mayotte est passé de paradis en enfer. Aujourd'hui,
Daniel believes in Mayotte's potential. He says insecurity is holding his country back. His people hope a change in the law will deter illegal migration. But many here are seeking asylum, fleeing bloodshed and persecution, and a change in the law may not be enough. Last year, the French government cleared the migrant camps that had grown around the stadium, but those left behind now live on the streets. Some have paid smugglers thousands of dollars to make the dangerous crossing to Mayotte, leaving homes and families across Africa.
How many of you came here by boat? Hands up.
There is some people from Burundi, another from Congo, another from Somalia, and then there is many tribes from Africa. They're here.
I don't think a person to go in that water is it's a choice. It's where you live by no choice. It's near.
As tears soaked her hijab, this mother told me before leaving East Africa she'd been repeatedly raped. Her pursuit of freedom from persecution meant leaving her 2 children behind.
Oh, because now, if I stayed with them, would have done together. But I had to choose. Not even to choose. I had to run to let them live. I miss them. I miss
every day.
Every day.
News of the proposed birthright rule change had not reached anyone we spoke to. They told me that no policy change would be a deterrent from the danger they face back home. Mayotte is home to the oldest mosque in France. 97% of the population here are Muslim. During Ramadan, despite immigration tensions, people of all nationalities pray together.
But despite its high Muslim population, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the far-right party, has gained 45% of the vote here.
France's far-right National Rally Party, which Marine Le Pen leads in Parliament, has a strong anti-immigration stance. And is often accused of being Islamophobic.
When I come to a mosque like this, I hear the call to prayer, I speak to you, I see the faces. It makes me wonder how Marine Le Pen got so many votes.
I think that it was the first person who promised the security. It's just for that. We need security, and the current government didn't bring it till now.
History has divided these islands, and its future is splitting French politics. The far right says the change to the birthright rule should be extended to everyone born across the whole of France, whereas the left call it unconstitutional and contrary to French values. For Mayotte, if the birthright rule change does not stop the small boats, it will be up to a divided generation of children born on the same island, some French and some of undecided nationality, to find a new solution.
Antoine Allen in Mayotte. And finally, with an increased awareness of the impact of flying on our carbon footprint, many passengers are looking for more sustainable ways to travel. After years of cuts to their services, sleeper trains are now seemingly back in demand, with new routes opening on the continent. But is this really a viable alternative to taking a plane? Well, Harry Horton sped across Europe to explore further.
There was once a time when sleeper trains were the easiest and quickest way to get across Europe.
Doesn't anybody sleep? Yes, they do. 6 to a couchette.
The growth of low-cost airlines led to decades of decline for the night train. But demand now appears to be growing, and the sleeper is fighting back, with at least 6 new routes launching this year.
It is a very special location for a very special day.
Salim Benkaran is someone working to bring more sleeper trains into the market, like the one I'll be catching tonight.
It is the very first night train connecting Brussels to Prague. Even before, in the last decades, there were no night train connecting both of the cities. So in a context of European integration, it is a very significant day.
It's also significant because, unlike many other state-run services, this train is run by a private company with investors and aiming to turn a profit.
Well, it's just after 7 o'clock here in Brussels, and this train is about to travel for the next 15 hours through the night all the way to Prague. And the people behind the service hope that this is a new dawn in European sleeper trains.
The route takes in 4 countries and 4 capital cities, taking us north out of Belgium, east through the Netherlands and Germany, before turning south to our final stop in the Czech Republic.
So let's see what we've got in here then. So I think it's enough for 6 people to sleep in. That's one bed. Here's another. I think this comes down like... Oh! There we go. There's a little barrier there to stop you falling out. There's a ladder to get up. Quite long enough for my feet. That's lovely.
In the train world, there's one man almost everyone knows, and he was also taking this journey. Mark Smith, the creator of the travel site The Man in Seat 61.
Cheers.
Cheers. What's not to like about bunk beds on a train? An overnight journey, leaving in the evening and arriving in the morning, fits into your schedule much better than a long daytime trip.
It seemed to me about 5 or 6 years ago that sleeper trains were dying out.
It's absolutely true. Sleeper trains are the most difficult to make work commercially. You've got 20 or 30 people in beds, whereas in the same coach, if it had seats and a daytime train, you could get 70 people in.
Is it realistic we'd ever see a sleeper train from London to Prague, London to Barcelona, perhaps?
We're not going to see a sleeper train from London. If you run it through the Channel Tunnel and incur UK border costs, UK Channel Tunnel security costs, it's the cost side that's the problem running it to and from the UK.
As we moved through Germany and I got ready for bed, it was clear to me that despite the demand, new sleeper services need to overcome some big obstacles. Good night.
Well, it's morning, and I'll be honest, it wasn't the best night's sleep I've ever had. We've just been told we're delayed, actually, by around 50 minutes. There was a detour in the night at some point, but we're here. We've got our breakfast, we've got some coffee, and it's all part of the journey, I guess. Chris, good to meet you.
Chris Engelsman is the co-founder of the European Sleeper who run this service.
What are the main challenges that you've faced in trying to get this service up and running?
There's a huge lack of proper night train coaches at the moment in Europe.
How old is this coach that we're in?
It's from 1955.
1955?
Yes, it's a classic one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And why can't you find any ones newer than that?
There's nothing around. I mean, the railways haven't been investing in night trains for decades.
After almost 16 hours of travel, we arrived in Prague, where I bumped into fellow passengers John, Kathy, and their dog, Rocky.
Why on earth did you choose to travel on a sleeper train?
That's partly the romance of it, and we wanted to come down this way, and it's an environmentally friendly way of travelling. It's easy to take a dog.
We just wake up and we're here, which is great. Yeah.
As I took in the sights of Prague, I too could see the romance of travelling by night train. It's clear why these trains appeal to people on holiday, but what about other passengers? Jan Illich works for the Czech railway company České dráhy, who've been running sleeper trains for decades.
How much demand do you see for sleeper trains from business travellers?
Honestly, we don't have these figures. You sell these tickets, let's say 2 or 3 months in advance, but you as a business traveller, you want to travel tomorrow. And of course, it's already sold out.
Well, this is our second night on a sleeper train, so it'll be interesting to see how different this service is, and crucially, whether we get a better night's sleep than last night.
This train will take us back into Germany and wind its way southwest, where we'll cross into Switzerland and finish in Zurich 14.5 hours later. As we set off, I wanted to find out a bit more about who takes these trains. In the cabin next door, a French family and German couple meeting for the first time.
You're travelling to Zurich?
Yeah.
Why did you choose to travel on a sleeper train?
My mother and I wanted to do a trip together, but for ecological reasons, I didn't want to use a plane.
You're in a room tonight. 2 strangers, 2 new friends maybe?
Yeah.
How is it meeting new people?
Actually, it's cool because we take time to speak and discover each other's life.
Hopefully just sleep through the night, and then tomorrow we will go to work straight from the train. So
you need to get a good night's sleep tonight?
Yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, will be unproductive work. But
So the kitchen is kind of small. It's not really made for a lot of food.
Katarina is our onboard steward who swapped the plane for the train.
I used to work almost 20 years in the air like an air hostess. I'm getting a little bit older, so now I'm settled down and I started to work on the railway. Sometimes it's even you need more balance in the train, I think, than in a plane. Yeah, really. Here it's so moving, so sometimes I'm losing the balance.
there's a really sociable side to these sleeper trains, and you can walk down a corridor and lots of people have got their doors open to their cabins, and you can just sort of pop in and have a chat. That sociable side of getting a sleeper train is one of the things that I feel is driving lots of people towards this form of transport.
After 2 nights on trains, I needed a break from the railways and another perspective. I popped into the Swiss tourism office to try and find out whether new sleeper routes were having any impact on tourism.
We have some lines that are coming into Switzerland from several European cities, but it's a niche. It keeps being a niche because there is 1 train per night, and we don't have to forget that still a lot of tourists are flying in.
There is definitely a demand for new sleeper services in Europe, but what I've learned this week is that there are big issues with capacity, availability and the practicalities of some of these trains, and for that reason I don't think they're about to revolutionise travel in Europe, but in the meantime they are definitely a really fun way to get around.
Harry Horton in Europe. And that's it for this evening, but do join us next month when we will be back with more stories from around the world. Until then, from me and the rest of the team, good night and thank you for watching.
Thank you.